Let me ask you this. How many of you guys were here last week when we were talking about modeling? Anybody? Okay. If you haven't seen, that was session number 3. If you weren't here for that, that is on the Bergen County YouTube channel, right? The Bergen County Partners YouTube channel. Go back and watch that. But we talked about the fact that, success leaves clues. And I shared a video of Tony Robbins who said, people have lived before us. And one of the things that Tony attributes a lot of his success to is he says when he wants to learn how to do things well, he finds people that are succeeding at what he wants to do. And he just goes out and he models them. He just goes out and he copies them, right? So there's a couple key models that I want to talk about today. On Friday of last week, we touched on the models in the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. And we talked about the economic model and the lead generation model and the budget model and the organizational model. We touched on those 4. And again, if you weren't with us on Friday, go back and watch that. And for sure, go get a copy of the MREA and get familiar with the ideas in that book. But today we're going to talk about best practice models that really help you get focused on really getting some traction and building your career. So I'm going to ask this question. How many of you have ever been lost? Have you ever been lost? Either you're driving someplace and you just kind of find yourself in an area where you don't know where you are. Has that ever happened to anybody? It doesn't happen as much today as it did when we used to have paper maps. I was in healthcare early on in my career. I was a healthcare worker and we were taking care of people that were living at home. And back in the day, we used to get these big books, these Hagstrom maps, and they had a different map book for every different county. And I had Essex County and Union County, which was pretty much the area that I covered. And even with the maps, there were times when I just didn't make sense. I couldn't figure out where I was. And it's not a great feeling. It's not a great feeling to be lost. The good news now is we have GPSs now. And so technically, most of us, either we have the app right in our phone. I use Waze, which is the travel app that you can put right in your phone. You're never really lost anymore. But the thing about it is the way that GPSs work, right, is they recognize that people have lived before us and they've left maps, right? And so the way that a GPS works is it just kind of, it knows where you are. It's a global positioning tracking system. It has 3 different satellites that are locked into the signal coming out of your phone, and it can tell where you are, and it superimposes that data point on top of the known maps. And as you travel, it just kind of moves you along. And the beauty of how a GPS works is that any data point that you want to go to, any place that you want to go, you put in that end address, it knows where you are, and it calculates the route. And it really is genius when you think about it. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. But there's a couple key things that have to happen for that to work well. One is you have to have a specific destination in mind, right? You can't go into your GPS and just say, take me to somewhere where the weather is cooler and sunny. It doesn't know where that is. But if you to put a specific destination in, a street address, a city address, it knows exactly where that is, and it can calculate the route to getting there. Well, our businesses are like that. And one of the things that as you're starting out that you've got to really think about is how much, well, let me back it up. In the economic model, when we talked about that on Friday, what we said was the economic model kind of gives you the numbers, the measuring stick. How are you going to know whether you're succeeding or not succeeding? How are you going to keep score? What are the metrics that you're going to track? And one of the things that we've got to figure out is, where am I trying to get to, right? Where am I trying to get to in my business? And the way that we're going to define that is, how much profit does my business need to generate to create the life that I want? That's going to be the measuring stick. Are you trying to generate a $100,000 business, a $200,000 business, a $50,000 business, $1 million business? There's a different route to get to any one of those different points. And so one of the things that is really important, and I know that that may not necessarily be the question that you've started with as you're thinking about getting this career going, how much profit are you trying to generate? When I ask that question frequently, the answer that I get is, I want to generate a lot. And that's a really good answer. except it's a really dangerous answer because you can make a lot of money in real estate. There's a lot of people who have. The problem is it's not specific enough to build a route to. I don't know what a lot is, and since it's not a clear data point, I can't build a pathway to a lot. What I need you to do is I need you to quantify that. And so when I ask agents to quantify that, then usually the next most common answer that I've gotten through the years, and I've been asking this question for many, many years, is I want $100,000. There's something about a six-figure income. There's something about $100,000 that just kind of feels like you've achieved a certain level of success. And so I say to agents, okay, is that $100,000 before expenses, gross commission dollars, before anyone has touched it, right? Remember the gross commission income, when you bring your first checks back to your offices and turn them in, whatever you walk away from the closing table with is the gross commission income, but you don't get to keep all of that. Broker gets some, the franchise gets some, all of the expenses that your brokerage takes will have a cap on them in our model, but you've got to put some aside for Uncle Sam. You've got to put some aside to run your business. The truth of the matter is that if you were to generate $100, what you could reliably expect to keep as profit is anywhere between maybe $30 and $40. About $60 to $70 of your 100 earned is going out the door in terms of what it costs to run your business. And so a lot of agents say to me, wait, hold up. If I make $100,000, I'm only going to walk away and keep maybe 40,000 of it. Yeah, that's probably about right. Now you could run your business more efficiently and maybe keep more of it. But the truth is, if you're building a pathway to the wrong number, then ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to get lost, right? So where we really start all this, and if you haven't done this yet, I would encourage you to spend some time to really think, how much profit, because you can only fund your life with profit. How much profit does my real estate business need to throw off so that I can create the life that I want for myself and for my family and for the people that I love and the people that are counting on me? And once we know what that profit number becomes, and remember, if you've got a second income, if you've got a second job, then maybe all of that profit doesn't have to come from your real estate business. If you've got a second income in your household, then maybe not all of that profit has to come from your real estate business. But once you know how much profit you need to generate, then you can work backwards to try to figure out, okay, when I add back in the amount that I have to pay my broker, when I add back in the amount that I have to pay for taxes, when I add back in my business overhead, how much money do I need to bring in at the top of the funnel, at the gross commission level, so that I can walk away with what I really need? And that's a really important exercise, because once we know that, then we can start to figure out how many transactions is that going to take. We can start to do some math and say, well, in the market that you're working in, the average sale price is, let's say, $400,000. And if the average transaction side earns about 2.5% on a side, a $400,000 sale at 2.5% is going to be $10,000. If I need $200,000 of gross income and each commission is worth 10, then I need to close 20 transactions. Now I can start to build a path. What combination of activities would it need to happen so that I could get 20 transactions to happen? Because it's a different path than if you're trying to generate 5 transactions or you're trying to generate 100 transactions. You follow where we're going on this? Does this make sense? And once you know the total transactions that you need, then we've got to make some decisions about what percentage of those are going to come on buyer side deals and what percentage of those are going to be listing side deals. At the end of the day, what we know is that buyers are the byproduct of listings. Is that buyers are attracted to the inventory. If you find a way to focus your lead generation activity on generating listings, marketing of those listings will generate the buyers. And what we know, and it's pretty consistently proven to be true, that usually for every listing that's successfully marketed, usually we can pull enough buyers across the marketing efforts to close one buyer per listing. That usually works well. And so if I needed 20 closings, then if I could just figure out how to take 10 listings, then those marketing of those 10 listings should put me in a pathway of enough buyers that I can get 10 buyers too. Now what I have to figure out is, what do I need to do to make 10 listings happen? Right? And then we go back again and we think about the conversions. Does every listing that you take close? What do you think? Is there any reason why a listing that you take would not close? Who could unmute and just kind of throw your thoughts in around that?
Yes.
Okay, Semra, why would a listing not close?
Finances issue, like mortgage companies, they would not approve, like their financial, and, could be a contingency or some kind of issue with the house.
So there could be a lot of reasons, right? Maybe the funding source. Now, if the buyer's funding failed, they couldn't get financing, conceivably we can go back on the market and find another buyer. But if there's a problem that we find with the home that makes the home kind of hard to sell, if there's a structural issue that comes up that the seller's not in a position to fix, you have a challenge there. A property should probably never not sell because it was priced too high. That really is the agent's fault, not the seller's fault. We know that the sellers don't understand the market well enough to price it properly. And it really comes down to an agent's ability to consult well to get that price proper. But the point of the matter is, there's the industry standard right now is nationally about 20 to 25% of all contracts fail. 1 out of every 4, 1 out of every 5. That's a big number. And I think it's too big of a number. I think the reason why so many deals fail is because I don't think agents necessarily help buyers and sellers really anticipate what's coming and troubleshoot these deals as well as they probably could and manage their expectations as well as they could. But if we were to just roughly say that, 1 out of every 5 deals is not going to close, if I needed 20 in total and 10 of those was going to be listings, and I know only 80% of my listings are going to get to the closing table, well, then if I need 10 to close, I got to take more. And how many more? Well, you figure it out. You divide by 80%, and what you find is I'm going to need to get 12 and a half listings taken in order to guarantee that 10 of them are going to close. Right? We following the math back on these conversions. Now, 12 and a half listings is hard to take. I'm going to round that up. It's hard to take a half a listing. You can't just list the garage, right? You got to list the whole thing. And so by doing these numbers, by knowing these clear data points, we can work backwards and say, now I need to get 13 listings taken. And then the final conversion point that we have to know is what percentage of the time when I go on a listing appointment do I get it? We got to be tracking our success rate and see what that is, because I need 13 to come on board. And if I'm only converting at 50% of my appointments, then it means I got to go on twice as many appointments. I got to figure out how to get to 26 listing appointments a year. If I'm converting at 90% of my listing appointments, then it's much different. Then I only need to kind of get to 14 to 15. It's really important that we kind of think about all this data. And this is the least sexy, fun part of real estate, but probably the most important. Because until we start by really thinking through how much profit do I need to generate to create the life that I want, and then back into how much gross income needs to be brought into the operations to generate that kind of profit, how many transactions in total would create that gross income, what percentage of those should be listings and what percentage should be buyers, and then work back on the listings and say what percentage of my listings close, what percentage of my listing appointments convert. At the end of the day, what we finally get to is the all-important number that we put in our GPS, basically, which is how many listing appointments does my lead generation activity have to create a year? Everything else, we go back to measuring, and everything that we do has to be measured against, is it getting me in the pathway of a listing appointment? If I know that target, back when I was doing coaching for this franchise group, and I do exclusively training really right now here, but I used to do this math with folks. We'd figure out what their number was. In the book, The One Thing, that Gary Keller and Jay wrote, they talk about this idea of success being sequential. and not simultaneous. You can't do everything at once. You do the first thing and then the next right thing and then the next right thing. And they use the image of a domino, of setting up a domino run and doing the first right thing leading to the next right thing. And the first right thing was knowing how many listing appointments you have to create. And what I would do is I got a label maker and I got a box of dominoes, and I took a domino and I took whatever their number of listing appointments was. I got my label maker and I put it on the domino and I drilled a hole in it and I made a key ring out of it. And I said, here it is. I want you to look at this every single day. You need to know exactly how many listing appointments you need to generate. And guys, you do as well. The very, very best practice models start by knowing where I'm trying to get to and reverse engineer what number of listing appointments do I need to generate to make that all come real. So do you follow the logic on that before I move on? I just want to make sure everybody's with me. Is there any questions that you have about that? Has anybody taken the time yet to do this, or is this still something that you need to do? I just want to know where you guys are. You can either put in chat, I've done it, or I haven't done it, just so I get a sense of where we are right now. Or you can unmute. But before we go on, I just want to make sure that we're all sort of kind of.
I had done it for my other business. We buy ugly houses. And we purchase houses that are in that 20% you were talking about.
Yeah.
Houses that have a structural problem, or they happen that the seller doesn't like to clean the house before the showing, so the agent cannot sell it. You know, what we call it an ugly situation. Or somebody who is, you know, have too much, too messy. And so we go ahead, or the house, you know, doesn't have the proper distribution. So we go ahead and purchase that house, fix it up. And normally what we do it, if the house is given to us by an agent, we give it back to the same agent in an improved situation.
Right. And so, but you've done some of those metrics in that business. You know how many transactions it's going to take to get you where you want to go. Is that what you said?
You know, for us, it's for anybody, you know, it should be very important to know the cost, you know.
Well, and for your business, if you're going to buy, it sounds like what you're doing is you're buying and you're kind of flipping these. You're investing some money and cleaning them up.
Right. So it cost me around $7,484 to buy a house. So yeah. So I know the numbers. So if I want to buy 10 houses, I know I have to have at least, you know, $75,000 in a. And
Javier, what you know, because you've done this as a business person, you know what your acquisition costs are. Right. You know what it costs to do stuff. Right. You know, you don't go into a house without any idea what it's going to cost you to fix it up. You know how much a kitchen is. You know how much a bathroom is. You probably are buying some of the stuff on scale so that you can do it, you know, less expensively. And you know roughly what your profit's going to look like on the back end.
Like example, I know it costs me 20% to flip a house. So if I buy a house for $400,000 and I sell it for $500,000, I didn't make a single dollar.
Right. Exactly. And so the only way that you can be profitable in that kind of an environment is you have to know what your acquisition costs have to be. You have to know what your rehab costs are going to be. And you got to make sure that at the back end that the market can support that. Right. So look, it's all about knowing your numbers, and the beauty of a GPS, and we're going to get into the model of the GPS in a second. We have a tool here that we're going to ask you to use. It's called the GPS. And I see in chat, I haven't done it. I haven't done it. I have not done it. I have an action plan that I need to take. All right, Alexa. Guys, and I'm going to throw out there, if you ever want to just jump on a Zoom call with me and do this with me and work these numbers for your own business, just reach out to me or jump in one of the office hours that I do, and we'll work these numbers out. But once you know these numbers, again, the beauty of a GPS device in your phone is there's maps. They're preloaded. It knows where you are. It knows where you're going. It knows what the route is, and it's tracking what's happening. And when you're driving, if you make a wrong turn, your GPS gives you an alert. What does it say if you're driving a car and you make a wrong turn? Your GPS is programmed to say something.
Reroute.
Recalculating, right?
Yes.
Here's what it doesn't say. It doesn't say, God, you're an idiot. It doesn't say, dumbass, I've been telling you for 3 miles that this exit was coming up. How the hell did you miss it? It simply says, look, you said you wanted to go here. suddenly you're going in a different route. If you really want to get where you said you were, you got to come up with a different route. And here's what I propose, right? That's what the tool of the GPS does. It recalculates for you. And so our business GPS has to have a couple of key things in it, right? First thing we got to do in our business GPS is we've got to figure out where are we going. We've got to figure out how much gross revenue do I need to generate so that I can create at the back end what I want in terms of profit. And we'll do those exercises together, right? If you want to. But more importantly, it starts with going to the people that have a vested interest in that answer. It starts with, talking to your partners, your spouse, or whoever has an interest in this and say, look, what are we trying to create for ourselves? How much profit do we need? How much gross? Once you know what your gross commission income goal is, and for the GPS business tool, that's the measure that I'm going to ask you to use. Back into and figure out how much gross revenue at the beginning of the funnel do you need to put into the machine so that you walk out on the back end with the profit that you need. The bigger your team is over time, many times the big teams that I've coached through the years, they measure their goals in terms of transaction units. Last year we did 175 closings. This year we're going to try to get to 220. For most solo agents, measuring it in terms of gross commission income is the best, right? Just using your GCI target, whether it's 100, 500, 200, it doesn't matter. But that's your goal. The next thing that we've got to do is to recognize that we need to kind of focus what we're doing here. We're not going to just take actions randomly. We're not just going to, we know that generating leads is the important part of our business, that without leads, we don't have anything. On Friday, I showed you the little triangle model of the pyramid. And on the bottom of the pyramid, it said leads. And on the left side of the pyramid, it said listings. And on the right side wall of the pyramid, it said leverage, leads, listings, and leverage. That without leads, we don't have any business, right? And listing leads are more valuable than buyer leads because of the leverage that they bring to us in attracting us buyers. But we can't just let our lead generation activities just be random. I'm not going to try this for a little bit and that for a little bit. What I need to do is I need to kind of prioritize into a couple key areas and focus my activities and try to build momentum. When you think about it, I like to use this analogy. A commercial airliner, if you've been on them, and I'm sure you have, they're heavy. And you fill those commercial airliners up with people and luggage and fuel, and then they're really heavy. And yet a commercial airliner can get off of the runway and get into the sky. And how does it work? Well, I'm not going to try to explain flight, largely because I'm not a physicist, but I can tell you this much. You need to kind of get the forward motion on that big airliner to move forward at a rate of speed that's fast enough that you can get lift under those wings at a high enough rate to lift all of that weight off the ground. And the more weight you have to lift, the more energy it takes. If I just have a little ultralight airplane, heck, I could run that with a single propeller and a lawnmower engine. If I had a little Cessna, I could just put a single prop. But a commercial airliner, you need way more energy. And so what you have to do is you have to focus that energy into the thrust of a jet engine. You cannot put enough propellers on a commercial airliner to generate enough forward motion to get the lift you need to get that much weight off the ground. You need thrust. You need a jet engine. And focused energy is the name of the game. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus our lead generation activities into a couple key areas. Number one, your database. Your database is your business. It's session number 3, I believe, or session number 4, perhaps, of the Ignite class, where we talk about your database is everything. The relationships you have, how you nurture those relationships, how you grow that community and nurture that growing community is really going to be responsible for 80% of the success, 90% of the success that you have. And so the first priority of our business has to become, how do I strategically engage the relationships that I already have consistently over time so that people remember who I am, so that I can add value to their lives, so that they're happy to have me come back again? And how do I continue to grow that community of more and more people who would be good candidates for me to do business with? And I have to kind of think about that very strategically. But the first priority is going to be database focused, building that community and engaging that community. The second priority for most agents, I believe, should be geographic. I really can tell you from studying the market and from coaching and being a top agent myself when I was actively selling, you can't be an expert in everything. To separate yourself from the thousands and thousands of agents that are out there. And guys, there's a lot of agents out there. There is a lot of competition. In the National Association of Realtor, I think our membership is up to 1.4 million. In New Jersey, there are, I don't know what the current number is, somewhere around 70,000 agents, probably 15 to 18,000 working in Bergen County alone. And so in order to separate yourself from the tens of thousands of agents that are out there that are essentially your agent competition, you have to have a deeper level of knowledge. You have to know the market better. You have to know the inventory better. And you just can't learn everything about all of New Jersey. You have to pick a lane. What you will find if you study the MLS, and I show this in the Ignite class with some graphic slides, the very top agents do not spread themselves across multiple towns. The very top agents, they pick a few towns and they focus their business there. If you look at the Garden State MLS, which is a MLS that serves Essex County, Union County, sort of a little south of where we are. I did a study of that MLS recently, and I took a look at the 5 top agents in terms of volume. And what you're going to find is when you dig into the business of those 5 top agents, and at this point, at that level, to be top 5 in the MLS, you're doing over 100 transactions a year. But when you dig into where are they doing the business, what you're going to find is consistently 40 to 60% of their business is in either 1 or 2 towns only. Some of those agents do as much as 70% of their business in 1 town only. And so it's really important to establish a geographic priority and start and that's not to say that you would never do business outside of those towns. But it is because, look, your database, which is priority number 1, you're going to nurture those relationships and they're going to present opportunities to you. And if you say to folks, I'm focusing on Paramus and, I don't know, pick another town, Oradell. And if somebody comes up to you and says, yeah, my brother's looking to sell his house in West New York, would you take it? Sure, I would if it made sense. It's not that I wouldn't take business outside of my target towns. It's that when I focus my lead generation activities, I only want to focus generating new opportunities in those target markets. Because if I can generate a listing in my target market, marketing of that listing is going to bring me in touch with buyers who want to live where? In my target market, where I know it better. If I have lots of buyers looking to buy homes in my target market, now I have a reason to go out and prospect for sellers with a script that sounds something like, I'm currently working with 25 buyers who are looking to buy a home in Paramus. Have you thought about selling your own? And so lead generation activities, when you carve out the time to do that, should always be generating leads inside your defined community before you try to go outside of it, right? So the first priority, I always encourage agents, database. Second priority, I always encourage agents, pick a geographic area that you become an expert in. And then if you want, and for most agents, that's enough. That's enough to get started. Focus on building your database, focus on getting to know your geographic communities and all the inventory in them and the lifestyle and everything that you need to learn to become an expert. If you wanted to overlay a third priority, you could put a demographic twist on that. What do I mean by a demographic? Who's got an idea of what a demographic priority could look like? Anybody?
By zip code?
What's that?
By zip code or a town?
Well, that would be the geographic priority. But the demographic priority would
be for the children.
You know what? I'm not hearing your audio too well.
Like certain, like community for school demographic for where they go in school, what
Yeah,
kind
it could
of,
be that, where they're going to school largely is geographically driven. I'm thinking about things like if I wanted to focus on, I know some agents who specialize in working with military families, right? Military families move a lot. That's a demographic. Or downsizers. Or sometimes, I know people that specialize in people that speak certain languages and can share that language. There's lots of different ways you can carve that up. I know some people who, there's a guy who you guys might know, Steve Gendel, his name. He's actually our regional technology coordinator for Keller Williams in the tri-state region. And one of the things that Stephen is very public about is his wonderful son, Josh. He was born with some disabilities. And I don't remember exactly all the different surgeries that he's had through the years, but Josh is now, I believe, maybe in his early 20s, late teens at the earliest, or early 20s. Josh has been in a wheelchair his whole life. And you know what? If you've got a child who lives in a wheelchair, your housing needs are just different from other families. And one of the things that Stephen has become an expert in is how to help families with children with disabilities think about their housing and buy the right house for what their needs are. And it's a skill that he's developed through the years. I think he's even self-published a book on that topic. And that's a demographic that Stephen is very, very, very capable of serving because he gets it really well. And a lot of agents just don't have that background, right? If there is a little niche market like that makes sense for you, then you might want to think about that priority as well. But for the most part, most of us should be thinking in terms of our priorities being database, geographics. And then what we need, GPS. So I have my goal, my financial goal. If I'm going to prioritize my activities into a couple key lanes that I'm going to focus on, now strategically, what am I going to do? That's what the strategies are. And so the priorities, database priority, geographic priority, demographic priority, your strategies now is going to ask you, what specifically are you going to do? And we're going to think about the actions themselves. Some of the things are going to be marketing activities. Some of the things are going to be prospecting activities. What are they, right? We have to make some decisions. And let's just say for a second, let's go to the geographic priority. If I decided that I was going to try to break into the Paramus market, what combination of activities am I going to do? Maybe I'll do some door knocking. Maybe I'll do some open houses. Maybe I'll do networking events. Maybe I'll get involved in community organizations. Maybe I will send mailers. Maybe I'll sponsor a little league team. There's a million things that I can start to do to get myself out there. What am I going to choose to do? And the way you want to think about these activities is using the acronym that I call SMART. SMART stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-bound. Let's dissect that. Do I know specifically what I'm going to do? If I choose door knocking, let's say, if I decide that I want to door knock my way around Paramus and start to look for leads, do I know specifically what doors I'm going to knock on? Do I know specifically what I'm going to say when they answer the door? Measurable. How many doors? How many doors am I going to knock on? Is it 10 doors? Is it 10 doors a day? Is it 10 doors a week? Is it 10 doors a month? Because your outcome is going to be very, very different depending on how many activities you do over what time period. Specific activities, measurable activities that are achieved within a defined time frame. Are they actionable? Meaning, are they things that you control, or do you need somebody to initiate it? You never want your lead generation to be initiated by someone else. You may have lead follow-up as part of your lead gen, where you're going to follow up on all your inbound sign calls or inbound inquiries quickly and efficiently. But your lead generation that you're strategically doing is an action that you initiate. And then the final one are realistic. Is it realistic? Is it realistic from the standpoint that you really know how to do it well? Is it realistic from the standpoint that the amount that you need to commit to is achievable? If you told me that you were going to door knock as part of your strategy to break into Paramus, and if you told me you were going to knock on 250 doors and have 250 conversations a day, I'd tell you that's probably not realistic. You might knock on 250 doors. I don't think you're going to get to 250 people answering the door. What's realistic, right? Is it realistic from the standpoint that you're even willing to do it in the first place? I know lots of agents who look at successful agents and try to copy them and model from them, But what they choose to do is to model a lead generation technique that just really isn't in their wheelhouse. There are some people who are really very good at picking up the telephone and cold calling a cold list of phone numbers. There's a small percentage of agents who are really good at that. The vast majority of agents, and I don't know if anybody on this call would feel this way, but I know I've been doing this long enough that I know that most agents would rather get hit in the head with a brick than pick up a telephone list of strangers and just start dialing through it. If that is not something that you're realistically willing to do, what would you do? Well, what I would be willing to do is go to a networking event and meet people face to face. What I would be willing to do is host an open house and meet guests and greet guests as I come in. Okay, then let's do that. Right? Because what we have to do is figure out what strategic activities from a marketing standpoint or a prospecting standpoint that we can make specific, measurable, realistic, time-bound, actionable. I need about 4 or 5 activities to support each priority. What 4 or 5 things do I need to do to make sure my database priority is going to be successful? What 4 or 5 measurable strategic things do I need to do to make my geographic priority successful? And what we do is we create a form that looks like this. And we break it into columns. And on the top of the form, we write down what our goal is. This is going to be measured in GCI dollars. And then the first column is going to be the database priority. And in each box is a strategy. What's strategy number 1? Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time-bound strategy number 1. What's strategy number 2? What's strategy number 3? All the way to maybe 4 or 5. Same with the geographic priority. Maybe the same with the demographic priority. Now what happens is I've got this menu of 10 or 15 different specific activities that make up the answer to the question of what should I do during my lead generation. I don't want to just randomly just throw stuff up against the wall. I thought about this and I have like 4 or 5 things for each priority. And if I do those things, I think that priority is going to be successful. When it's time to do lead generation, I do these activities. And if I find myself doing something that's not in this menu, I'm getting distracted. I can't let that happen. If there's something that is out there that's better at supporting my priority than what I've already planned for myself, maybe I can swap it out. But I have to have a focused plan. GPSs are about focus. They're about laser focus on what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is it supporting my goals? If I'm not doing any activity that's supporting my database priority, my geographic priority, or my demographic priority, then anything else is a distraction and it's taking me away from building the momentum that I need to get this big, heavy plane off the ground. Does that make sense? I want you, before we move on, I just want to make sure you guys are with me here. Does this make sense logically in terms of structuring this way?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what might not be clear yet exactly, depending on where you are in your business, is what are the potential activities that I can choose from? You mentioned door knocking, Hal, but what else is out there? Well, to some extent, that's where it really pays to get into Ignite. And what you're going to see is there's classes in Ignite that in the early on that really start to talk about where are we going to generate these leads from. But we know that prospecting and marketing is going to be the genesis of what lead generation is. What combination of those 2 things? And again, this is where you start to talk to some other agents. You see what's worked for them. I will tell you that getting into open houses in your geographic neighborhoods is what we teach at Ignite is the fastest pathway to get in front of people who want to do real estate deals. And so that is probably should be one strategy for your geographic priority, right? But I want you to
Hal, can you please explain when you say open houses, you mean going into other agents'
nope,
listings?
I mean hosting your own. I mean finding another agent who has a listing that needs to be held open as part of the marketing plan, but they don't have the ability to host it themselves. And getting, having that agent allow you to host that listing on their behalf.
Okay.
Now, Samara, if have you ever hosted an open house before?
No, I have not.
Have you ever observed one before?
Yes.
Okay, good. So if you've observed an open house, then you have a little bit of a sense of kind of how do they do it? How does it work out? We have a class. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, we have a class on Ignite that's up on the Bergen County Partners page. You can go back and watch on open houses. But in the very beginning, until you have your own inventory to host, you are going to sort of rely on the support of other agents. The strong listing agents have multiple listings, and they can't hold them all open at the same time. And so they do need the partnership of other agents to help them out. I would probably back to the agent services coordinator in your office. And which office are you in, Deborah? Which
I'm actually in Parkview.
You're where? Parkviews?
Rutherford Park.
So yeah. I'd go to Kevin, right? I'd go to Kevin and I'd ask Kevin, hey, help me. Who has open houses that they need some help with, and see if. Kevin
but here's the thing, Hal. I want to ask you a question. If you can, I know maybe I'm sorry that I'm going to ask this question. I know it's
go ahead.
Just you said earlier that the top agents focus in certain areas, like 1 or 2 towns, or 1 town 70%. So I live in Wyckoff, and I'm really trying to like stay in this area, like Wyckoff, Franklin Lakes, this neighborhood here where I live in.
Uh-huh.
And I know I'm in Rutherford. You think I should switch offices so I'm collaborating more with that town, like in Ridgewood, or
here's what I think.
Would be a best suggestion?
I think that in a virtual world that we live in right now, I think the geographic location of where that office is less important than it's ever been before. The thing that's most important is, do I get the support and the resources that I need from my back office team to help me grow my business? There are people in your office right now that are doing business all over New Jersey. There's people in the Ridgewood office that are doing business all over New Jersey. The same with all of our offices.
Okay.
So I don't think it matters really. And you know what? If you want to have a strategy conversation with me about how to break into the Wyckoff market, then what I'd say is jump in on an office hour or reach out to me. Maybe you and I have a one-on-one telephone call and plan a little strategy around that. But I don't think the office that you're in matters.
Awesome. Thank you.
Getting the support that you need. That's the key, right? So the goal here with this GPS though is this: prioritize activity, right? And then measure that. Now, once I've got these activities and I've got my menu of what should I be doing, now what I got to do is I got to block my calendar, because I have to make sure that I carve out time in my day to do these things. I put a quote up on Facebook today, Jim Rohn, who is now, he's passed away, but he's really one of the great personal development coaches of all time. And he said, success is just, the discipline of a couple of key habits, a couple of key things done repeatedly day after day. And you do the right thing again and again and again, it becomes a habit. It becomes a routine. And what we need to be doing is making sure that we take a look at our calendar and we put blocks into our calendar to do the most important thing. Now, this calendar I just pulled off of Google. This is somebody who is probably a writer, because you see that writing is the biggest time block in the morning that they've carved time out to do. For us as real estate agents, the most important thing that we should be doing with our day is lead generation. And we're going to ask you to put a lead generation time block in the beginning part of your day. And you're going to ask me, why do we do it in the morning? Because I don't reach as many people in the morning. I would reach more people if I called them after work. And I said, yeah, that's true. You would. But the reason why I want you to do your lead generation in the morning is because in the morning, before you've been caught into the distraction of your day, in the morning when you have more physical energy of your own, and in the morning when you are well rested from the night before, you are more likely to have the energy that it takes to push yourself to do the lead generation. What happens is, as the day goes on, we get distracted and lots of things crop up that sound really important and they're urgent. And the most important things in our lives never scream as loud as the distractions do. And what happens is, as we get tired, as we go on and we get hungry, as we get, we're not as well hydrated, what we come to learn is that, willpower, it has nothing to do with personal character. Willpower is an energy state in your body. When you have the energy, you have the ability to override your will to do something, to do the thing that you'd really rather not do. When you're tired, you're not going to do it. I can be healthy all day long, and go off and eat very badly at 9 o'clock at night. I do it all the time because at 9 o'clock at night, I'm tired and I'm not as able to kind of hold myself to do the thing that I should be doing. We're going to ask you to do the lead generation in the morning. And in this morning lead generation block, you're going to do those activities that you specified as part of your GPS plan, and you're going to do them in the morning. And when somebody calls you up and says, hey, I'm a home inspector and I need to do an inspection at 125 Main Street, I'd like to do that at 10 o'clock. Can you meet me there? You're going to say to them, I'm sorry, I have an appointment at 10 o'clock already. Can we do it later in the day at 1 or 2 o'clock? Or push them back out. You've got to protect your lead generation time block. And in that time block, you've got to do the activities that you specified in your GPS. You know, when you do it this way, when you build out these time blocks and you protect these time blocks, you're going to find success happening. You know, there's a saying that says, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And the reason why I think that's true is because the busier you are, the more purposeful you have to be about how you choose to use your time. You think about how focused you get the day before you go on vacation and how everything gets done and every minute of that day is orchestrated like a dance. You know exactly what needs to do first, exactly what you need to do second. We have to time block our calendars in much the same way. We start the day with a time block on getting centered and getting focused. We begin the day with the most important thing, which is our lead generation. Then we put in at lunchtime, put your lunch in, build in your lunch, rest. You're needing willpower. Willpower is energy. Replenish, slow down, take a break. People feel it's a badge of honor sometimes that I pushed my way through and I didn't even stop for lunch. Well, that's just foolish. Don't do that. Take a break, retool. And then in the afternoon, we do the lead follow-up, right? And we do the appointments and we do the research and we do the previewing and all that stuff. We do it outside of the most important block, which is our lead gen block. Once you've got these two models mastered, the GPS, knowing where you're trying to get to financially, what priorities you're going to focus your activities in, what specific measurable activities you're going to commit to doing, and then orchestrating your day to protect the time to do those things in, now you're on the path. Now you're on the path of those agents who succeed at the highest levels. And folks who do it this way succeed faster, and they succeed with less stress, and they grow bigger businesses. Folks who don't do it this way struggle. I don't want you to struggle. So when we kind of get into the models, the first two models that I wanted to share with you were the GPS model and the time blocking model. And the last thought on time blocking is we start, thinking ahead in terms of where do I want to be in the future, right? Stephen Covey, the great author, says that we start with the end in mind. We start by figuring out where do I want to get to. The GPS gives us a specific destination. But once I've figured out what activities I need to accomplish, then we do something called goal setting to the now. What am I trying to get done this year? Well, we did the math. We're trying to get to 28, pick a number, 28 listing appointments this year. Okay. In order to be on track for that, how many do I need to get to this month? In order to be on track for this month, what do I have to get done this week? In order to be on track for this week, what activities do I need to complete today? In order to be on track for my goals today, what do I have to be doing right now? Kind of taking the big end vision of where I'm trying to get to, what I'm trying to accomplish, and chunk it back to monthly goals, weekly goals, daily goals. What should I do right now to make sure that I'm on track? Now you've got a way to stay focused. That's the kind of ongoing feedback that the GPS needs in order to tell you whether you're on track or you need to recalculate, right? And so these are the models, and they're not complicated. They're not complicated, but they're certainly important. And I'd encourage you to start, if you haven't done it yet, and I know that many of you on the call haven't had a chance to do that yet, start with really thinking about where you want to be. What kind of life do you want to have? How much revenue and profit does it require to do that? How much gross revenue would it be required to generate that kind of profit? And then work our way backwards to the number of transactions and the number of listings and the number of listing appointments. If you really have time to dig into this, go back to the Bergen County Partners YouTube channel, and you're going to see a class on there called the Business Planning Clinic, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, MREA Business Planning, I think it's called. It's a 2-hour-long video where we walk you through those exact steps to help you create your plan for yourself. Then we do the GPS, then we time block, and then we execute. And it's really that simple. It just isn't that easy to do, right? Success is simple. It's just not easy. So that said, we're going to park it there. I'd love a couple people to give me some ahas today. Any takeaways, any information that came to you today that's causing you to think differently, or actions that you're going to take differently as a result of being on this call?